breaking news. President Joe Biden has told a key ally that he's weighing whether to continue in the race, the New York Times has reported. According to the Times, Biden knows that salvaging his candidacy, that's the quote, may be impossible after his disastrous debate performance last week. Now, a White House spokesperson did deny that report, saying it's absolutely false. In any case, White House Chief of Staff Jeff Zients is holding an all-staff call this afternoon as business leaders, pundits, and even now some Democratic officials are calling on Biden to step aside. Meanwhile, Team Biden has offered up this excuse for his weak debate performance: jet lag. At a donor event in McLean, Virginia on Tuesday evening, he said, quote, "I decided to travel around the world a couple of times. I don't know how many time zones. Shortly before the debate, I almost fell asleep on stage. By debate night, Biden had been back just shy of 2 weeks from his travels." Now, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre blamed his health when grilled by the press. Let's watch.
What I can tell you is that he had a cold and a bad night. I would not see this as an episode. I would see this as what it was and what we believe it to be, which is it was a bad night.
Biden's dismal debate night is now showing up in the polls. One poll by Our Revolution showed 67% of progressive voters want Biden to bow out. Of the 17,000 progressive voters surveyed, 15% of progressives say that they are unlikely or very unlikely to vote for Biden if he remains the nominee. Meanwhile, Biden's turning to his grandkids for some public support, at least according to a story dropped in the New York Times over the weekend. According to the Times, young Biden family members are trying to save his campaign after it took a nosedive in last week's debate. And among their ideas is that the president should increase his presence on social media, including, get this, jumping on the 2020 TikTok dance challenge of Megan Thee Stallion's single Savage.
That'll do it. Critics say propping Joe up in front of a phone to cut it up for TikTok dances, that's not a good idea. Luke Winkie of Slate writes that his grandkids won't save him, and that if true, this strategy is evident of a campaign that's run out of ideas. The deeper fundamental issue for the Biden camp is their, quote, candidate who is 81 and can't interface with another human being without the help of a teleprompter. It's unsolvable. Yeah, so this is I mentioned it just briefly in our previous segment, but the New York Times is now reporting that Biden has told an ally he's weighing options. Now, that was the headline, weighing whether to continue in the race. I will say the first couple paragraphs are a little bit gentler than that. This ally emphasized he's still deeply in the fight for re-election and understands that his next few appearances have to go well for him, which includes a George Stephanopoulos interview on Friday that's going to be pre-taped, which is an interesting choice. And then the White House says, no, he's not weighing whether to drop out. He's staying in.
Well, I'll tell you, if your allies are saying this, you need better allies, because there is, quite frankly, zero to be gained from planting any of this in the media or in voters' minds. You don't telegraph that you're considering stepping down from the presidency as a way to showcase your commitment and strength to the job. It's just going to raise more questions, as will this taped Stephanopoulos interview. And listen, George Stephanopoulos is a good interviewer. I expect him to not throw softball questions Biden's way. But
you think so?
I do. But the fact that it isn't live is just going to raise even more questions.
Yeah.
And that's a genuine question. The president's ability to think on his feet is critical to this job. And if you're only going to do 5 to 10 minute speeches, pre-tapes, that's just not how the world works.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that he can read off a teleprompter, that he can answer questions that are not hostile whatsoever. So I hope George Stephanopoulos really grills him, makes him think on his feet, because that's what he showed that he has trouble doing during the debate. In terms of the travel schedule, the jet lag, well, the plane flights were days before that. And I mean, even if they weren't, I get that it's an exhausting job. That is true. Being president is exhausting. Being Secretary of State is exhausting. There's a lot of travel to foreign countries, across our country. It takes a lot to travel from one side of our country to the other. It is a demanding job. The sleep schedule is rough, but that's why we have questions about whether it's a good job for an 81-year-old man who's showing his age. So I don't see what advantage that excuse really buys them. And then if he was sick, and he did sound kind of hoarse and whispering, he was hard to understand. He was harder to understand than he's ever been during that debate. I believe, I'm not unwilling to believe that he had a cold. It was just a very bad tactical error to allow the debate to go forward if he was not well. Maybe they would have taken a hit if they delayed the debate, but that would have been better than the hit they're taking for having him perform that debate without an ability to speak. He was hard to hear. He was mumbling. He was whispering, way worse than he is usual. In all fairness,
Yeah, it was challenging.
I accept
to
that he
watch.
was ill.
It was very challenging to watch. I mean, maybe he should put on bronzer. The main beneficiary of this has been Donald Trump, who is not the sharpest guy himself. I mean, by his own records, started his White House day about 10 in the morning, ended around 4 or 5. Yeah. Fell asleep during his New York criminal trial multiple times, has confused the names of his own cabinet secretaries. But as we have talked about previously, he doesn't show the same visible halting signs of this.
Yeah.
So in many ways, the perception that he can speak at a rapid pace, that he can speak at a high volume, is given voters a sense of confidence in his ability. And that is potentially, very likely, not earned. But that's a tough thing for Joe Biden to spin, because you're not going to suddenly become a much healthier, much more empowered speaker, especially after facing all of this.
Yeah, it's a bad situation. There's no way around it. I know we're talking about it a lot today. You know, this is what everyone in political news is speculating about. You know, we're going into a holiday weekend. Tomorrow's the 4th of July. Friday is not really a holiday, but a lot of people are probably going to treat it as such, as it's in between the 4th and the weekend. I think a lot of soul searching is going to go on this weekend among Biden and his family. And I know there are a lot of people, a lot of people I know in political media who are expecting a decision to drop out sometime over the weekend, imminently. I don't know. I think he might just hold on, because that's what it is common for political figures to do, as we talked about in our interview earlier in the show today with a professor who wrote about the parallels to 1968, which is the last time you had a political figure who was eligible to be the sitting president, eligible to run for re-election, deciding not to, even after taking a foray into the electoral season. Of course, LBJ was in a very different circumstance, because he had lost an early primary, and he hadn't actually won Biden has won the nomination. And also, we just live in very different political times, where political figures, even ones racked by massive scandals, don't just go away quietly. Donald Trump is in that situation. He's not going away quietly either. He has had multiple scandals. He lost his re-election, and he's facing criminal charges in a variety of jurisdictions, and he's still seeking office. So, square that with whatever Biden's calculus is right now.
Yeah, I mean, we've learned that powerful people don't like to give up that power. They always think they're up for the job. What baffles me is whoever planted this story in the New York Times about his grandkids should be fired. Did Joe Biden want TikTok to be banned? Isn't this a strange
He does want to ban
contradiction
TikTok.
here?
Yeah, he's the banned TikTok candidate, oddly enough, even though Trump, it originated
and then
under
changed his
Trump.
mind once he got some money from donors who want it to be kept open.
Yeah,
but
Trump no longer
this
wants to
is
do
what
it.
happens when your grandkids are advising your campaign. You can't expect them to understand the nuances of social media policy.
Grandkids, except the one that Hunter has with the out-of-wedlock girl, who I believe Joe Biden has not met that grandkid, and that grandkid has just not been included in the whole kind of Biden family in a way that seems kind of cruel and unnecessary. But
and they may have some great ideas.
Yeah,
apparently.
Can he floss his way to re-election? That's that one move.
After watching Joe Biden, and I hate to say it, but after watching him walk to the debate podium, I'm not sure dancing is really what we should be having him do if we want him to look vital.
No, that was the smartest thing he did during the kind of African dancing that was going on Juneteenth, and he's just standing rigidly silent.
Yeah.
Didn't fault him for that at all. I would have been standing rigidly in place during such things as well.
So he can acknowledge his limits sometimes.
Yeah. But Donald Trump does that, the kind of
that's
dance
almost
move.
even worse. The hotline playing SNL clip is burned into my memory.
I think it's beautiful to watch, and there's going to be more opportunities for that great content when he is reelected president, when Donald Trump is. Okay, we are continuing to monitor all of these breaking news developments. Stay tuned for more Rising right after this.